Are we ready to?
Yes. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our August Urban Ag Hour. We are so excited that you were able to join us this morning and hear from an amazing speaker. The Urban Agriculture Production Small Scale and Beginning Farmer Program is partnered with USDA, NRCS, and FSA to offer this series. And today we will hear from the University of Arizona's Associate Professor in the ACBS Department, Dr. Samuel Garcia, who will discuss the beginning processes of meat production. I will now hand it over to Dr. Garcia and let you take it away from here.
Sounds great. I'm going to share a screen. So while I do that, I'll introduce myself. So, like Tiffany said, my name is Sam Garcia. Can everyone hear me okay? Just a thumbs up would be good. You can see me, hear me, or is there good? Okay.
Yes, good.
So, I am, like Tiffany said, an associate professor of practice, it's what it's called. And can you see my screen,
Not yet, no.
Tiffany? Hello?
Not
Okay,
yet.
let me see. How about now?
Yes. Now we can see your screen.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I can't see any of you, but I can see my screen. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about the meat industry. Um, wait, I can't see anyone, so I don't know if anyone is. Let me go back just a second.
We can
I
see
haven't done this
your
since
Zoom screen now.
you can see myself, right? But see when I okay, I gotta change the view. There we go. There we go. Okay. So you can still see me?
Yes.
Okay. How about now? Do you just see my Zoom screen or do you see me in there also?
We see you, but not your presentation.
Oh, come on. Okay. Sorry. Because I couldn't see anyone's faces or if anyone was share screen. How about now? Just
No,
the
can't
presentation?
see you. Not your presentation, no.
Okay, let me redo that again. I guess I will just leave it. And now?
Yes, we can see your presentation now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So, I can't see any of your faces, or uh, if you have your hand up or anything. But really, what I'd like to do is make this more of a conversation. So, if anyone has a question, just kind of yell it out. Okay. Um, today, I'm going to talk about a little bit of an overview of the meat industry, especially when regarding to Arizona. And in the question part, I'll take any questions that you might have that um, talks directly to what you want to know, right? So some of you might want to know how to get started in the meat industry. Maybe you have a few animals and you want to see how to market those animals. So we'll talk about that whenever you have a question. Just let me know. Okay. So the meat. What do we consider meat? So meat is considered. We can talk about red meat, and that is meat coming from cattle, sheep, swine, and goats. So when you hear the word meat, especially red meat, it comes from these animals, and that does not include like offal or anything like that. It's pretty much just the skeletal muscle. Okay. Then we can talk about white meat, and those are from chickens, turkeys, geese. So those are coming from poultry. Okay. So in Arizona, we are not a really big state in terms of number of animals, and that has to do with the case. We are pretty hot, so meat production, even though it is large, it is a lot larger in other places. we do not have a ton of small slaughter places like some other states might, right? So if you travel back east, you might be in a place where every mile, every 2 miles, you see a new little ranch or farm that has animals. So there's a lot more places to also take your animals to get harvested. Here, sometimes you drive hours between towns. So just because of that, there's really not a lot of availability of where to harvest these animals. So if you're wanting to, so this kind of shows you where most of the animal production is concentrated. Um, in Arizona, most of these dots that we see here are mostly dairies. Okay, so we have looked at a different way of looking at our foods. So now we say that we should have more protein, more vegetables, less grains, dairy, and fruits. Back when I was a kid, they used to tell us we need to eat more grains, cereals, etc. So for a long time, meat and meat derivatives were seen as bad. But over the years, we've kind of changed the way we think about meat and fat, etc. Okay. So in Arizona, and these are numbers that are from a couple years ago, but just looking at the numbers, you can see that we have these are inspected animals, right? So in order to sell meat in the States, you have to have this label that's down here. And it says inspected and passed, right? And then you have an establishment number. So in order to sell meat in Arizona, you can have this one or a federal label that I'll show you in a minute. But this one here, you can sell anywhere within the state of Arizona. Your animals have to be inspected and they have to be harvested and processed under inspection. So these were the numbers that were inspected a couple years ago. For pigs, these were the number of animals that were inspected under Arizona Department of Ag. Lamb, sheep, and goat, we put them all together, but you can see the numbers there. And then for federally inspected beef, the number goes quite higher because we do have a big packing plant in um, Tolleson, Arizona. So if you see this type of inspection where it says U.S. inspected and passed, that means that meat that's produced with that with that federal inspection can then be sold anywhere in the United States. So at that point, if you are a beginning farmer and let's say you want to just sell your meat within Arizona, you can go to a state inspected plant. If you want to ship your meat to other parts of the country, you would have to go to a federally inspected plant. Now, what does it entail, federal or state? So the state program actually follows the same regulations as the um, federal. So in order for a state to have a program, they have to follow the same regulations or better. And so people might say, why not just do federal in that case? Well, sometimes the feds are a little harder to deal with than the local people. Um, Even though they're the same regulations, there's always that gray area where you might be better off using the state. These are the number of swine harvested under federal inspection. There's really not a lot of swine production in the state of Arizona, at least in a commercial level. These are the number of lambs, goats, and total red meat in Arizona in pounds. You can see that it's quite a bit. It's 42.5 million pounds, and it seems like it would be a lot, but it's only 1% of what the U.S. produces. Okay, so in the University of Arizona, we are actually going through renovation, but our number, we are federally inspected there, and our number was 966. And these are the different species that we harvested. We did beef, swine, lamb, goat, some bison, ratites, which are ostrich, emus, rheas, and then poultry. Okay. So what does the inspector do? In the inspection, we want to make sure that our meat is healthy, so meaning it has no disease, that it's sound, so clean, sanitary, wholesome, which means not adulterated in any way, and properly labeled so the customer knows what they're getting. Okay, so these are the different tasks that inspection personnel perform. Okay, um, within those tasks, they look at detection and destruction of diseased meat, contaminated meat. They want to make sure there's no microbial contamination or minimize microbial contamination, prevent false labeling, make sure that the application of the inspection legend is on there, etc. There are some exemptions to the inspection rule, and the inspections include custom slaughters. So, for example, um, if you raise your own animal, you can take it to a plant that does custom slaughter, and as long as that meat is not going to be resold, you're okay harvesting him there. The label, though, has to say not for sale, the package. If you do your own processing, you can also do that as long as you use that meat for yourself or guests, non-paying guests. If you decide to put a restaurant at your farm, the meat has to be inspected legally. Okay. So these are areas of responsibility for meat inspection, um, facility construction and operation, antemortem inspection, so make sure the animals are healthy, alive, postmortem inspection, so they check the carcasses, they check the meat, they will test random animals for microbes, they will test them for antibiotic residue, um, and anything that shouldn't be in that meat. Okay, so then they control and restrict condemned products. So if something is not fit for human consumption, that needs to be thrown away into nature. What was that? Tiffany, you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, it's because I heard like a echo, so I didn't know if someone was talking.
No worries.
Okay.
All good.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so these are different things that USDA or ADA, depending on what kind of inspection you want to use, will do. Okay, so in the facility construction part, they want to make sure that the plant that you're building, if you are deciding to build a plant, is clean and is able to be cleaned easily. So you can't put a piece of furniture right against the wall if you can't move it to clean that wall, right? You want to make sure you have good sanitation, that your doors don't lead directly to the outside, that you have some type of control over rodents or flies, etc. In checking the animals, they want to make sure that there's no visible disease. And if they seem normal and they walk normal, there's really not a concern. But if you suspect an animal of having um, any type of disease, right? So if it looks unhealthy, so they look for abnormalities. If the animal's hunched over, head down, sad eyes, etc., they might take a temperature check. And if that temperature is high, that means that an animal will have or can have potentially a problem. So then that animal cannot continue on to harvest, and it has to be put down humanely and discarded of. Any animal that cannot walk into the plant, it is not harvested under inspection. So you see in that picture there, the inspector goes in, walks them, moves them around, make sure that the animals are healthy. So that's what you. One thing to say is you cannot bring a dead livestock into a plant and expect to sell that meat. In case of one of the exceptions would be for hunters. They can bring a deer into a facility, but then that meat is not for resale. It's for their consumption, and it goes not for sale. So post-mortem inspection, they will check various organs, including the head and the viscera, and they will make sure that there's no disease present. And certain diseases, just the organ might be condemned. Some other diseases, um, the whole animal is condemned. One other thing that we look at is all the lymph nodes throughout the body. If there's any infection present, we want to see if it's throughout the body or if it's localized to one area. So that's one of the things that we look at. Um, and then any visible contamination during the harvesting process. So if for whatever reason the person doing the harvesting was not a very clean butcher and he left hairs, etc., over the carcass, all that needs to be trimmed away before the carcass is approved for sale. Okay, here's other examples. In this picture here, there's bruising throughout that side. All this would have to be cut off that animal before it can be accepted. Whole carcass contaminations might include, where the animal will be condemned would be tuberculosis, hog cholera, pneumonia, abscesses. If those are present, the inspector suspects those are present, they can do further testing and hold the animal, retain it until results come back. If the results come back negative, it can continue. But if they are positive, that a carcass can be condemned. Okay. Here's kind of a procedure of how they examine. They look at the lymph nodes, tongue, viscera, lungs, liver, heart, the intestines, and they want to make sure that it is healthy. That's pretty much what they're doing for us. All right. In certain animals, especially, in beef, animals over 30 months of age, there are certain parts that are not allowed to go into market because of the mad cow disease problem. So bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Cattle over 30 months or older, brain, skull, eyes, etc., pretty much the central nervous system is discarded and cannot go on to to be sold. So if you're raising animals and you have an animal that's older, certain parts of it will be discarded, meaning you can still eat the meat, etc. You just can't sell. For example, in the case of the T-bone that comes from this area, you would have to bone that out and sell New York strips and tenderloin, but not the T-bone or porterhouse. Okay. So within the product inspection, the USDA or ADA, they can do a re-inspection privilege, which means they can come back and check that carcass or that piece of meat at any time. They want to make sure that the product does not become soured, rancid, tainted, etc. Okay. In terms of processed products, they will inspect recipes. If you're making, like, for example, chorizo, they will make sure that what you're putting into that chorizo is acceptable and not in any way misleading to the customer. And that you label, for example, allergens. If your chorizo has some type of soy in it, they want to make sure to label that as allergen containing product, or they might say contains allergen or allergen present, and then you have to list which allergen. Okay. Inspection of boneless manufacturers of beef. So sometimes we make, in big plants, they make big combo bins where they have trimmings and fat, and they inspect to make sure that if you say you're selling 20% fat, it's actually 20% and not 50. Okay. Within the laboratory, different tests that they run, they want to make sure that regulations, for example, ground beef can not be more than 30% fat. Same in frankfurters, bologna, and some of those like ham, for example, you cannot add more than 10% water. So if you add water, you have to put water added, and some of you might have seen that at the grocery stores. Vegetable protein extenders, no more than 3.5%. That's another thing that we'll check for. They'll check for chemical residues, hormones, insecticides, pesticides. Not every single animal, but they will pick animals at random. So if they happen to find something wrong with that animal, You have to dispose of it or that meat. Um, you render it, you tank it, incinerate it, or freeze it. It depends on what it has. Okay. So then, after all that is good, they will then allow you to put on your inspection label. In this case here, for example, we have Houseman Foods, and this place produces pork chorizo. They have the inspection there. They have to have certain, the ingredients, and this says product must be cooked to 160 degrees. If you claim anything with your animals, like if it is grass-fed, natural, organic, any of that, then the label has to go through a longer process of approval to be able to put these types of claims on there. It is not hard to do, but it is time consuming. Now, why do we care? I mean, this here tells us that how much we spend on food. This was for 2014. So if you look at this here, 12.8% of our disposable income was spent on food. The remainder was spent on housing, transportation, um, personal insurance, healthcare, etc. So, really, in this country, we don't spend a lot of money in food. And what I'm trying to point out with this here is that there is money to be made, if that is your goal, by producing local foods that can then be sold into the market. And people are spending more and more on food. Some countries in the world might spend 50% of their disposable income on food, and that doesn't leave them a lot of space but to buy whatever's available. In our country, we're able to choose what kind of food. If we want grass-fed beef, we can then allow, maybe we don't buy alcohol or whatever to make sure that we are able to get that higher quality product. Some other countries, they get what they get, and there's really not much more they can afford. That's what I'm trying to point out. This is recent data, shows that food, we're spending a little bit more on food, but you can kind of see how lucky we are, where some countries are spending 50 to 70% on food. We get to spend 12.8% and have money rest for the remainder. So that was a very short and fast presentation. And here's my information. And I will share this information with Tiffany so she can email. But now, and I know I went pretty fast, but because I wanted to allow time for questions. Sorry for that. I want to have questions. And I can probably look at the chat, see if there's anything there.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that wonderful presentation. Just like Dr. Garcia said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions, but a lot of good information. And I see that I think Dana has her hand raised, so go ahead, Dana.
Hi there. Thanks so much for that presentation, Dr. Garcia. I'm going to see if I can put my video on here. There we go. Oh,
I see.
I don't know how to make myself disappear in the back. That's a little weird. Let's try that. There we go. I'm real curious. Are there any small, you may not know this, but small farmers that are producing rabbits for meat rabbits?
I'm not sure about rabbits in Arizona, but that is a good way of producing meat, protein, in a smaller area. I believe that rabbits kind of follow under, they might have an exemption. And Tiffany, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they might have an exception where you can produce a certain amount of rabbits, and you don't have to follow all the regulations, but you do have to have a clean place to do all the work. Once you get bigger, then you have to kind of fall into doing the same things that a beef producer or whatever. Now, there is Mississippi State does a really good program with rabbits where they teach their students to produce rabbits, and you can look that up if you want more information on rabbit production. Mississippi State has a good program where then they take the students from that program to South America, and they show families down there how to produce rabbits so they can have meat for their families, or even if they want to sell a little bit. So that's a good place to look for that specific
Okay.
question, which is rabbit production.
Yeah, I came from Western Washington a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago, and that seems to be kind of a niche market in that area. And a lot of people produce rabbits in like in garages. They do batteries of cages. And I know one of the big things is their feces, since they're caprophagic, and making sure that they have access to reconsuming their poop, but also keeping the facility clean. So hey Sarah, yeah, maybe you know about that too. So the biggest problem, like you pointed out in the very beginning, is heat. And I'm just curious how people mitigate heat, and if it's possible to do outdoor rabbit production, because it's something we've been interested in. But I don't know. So if there's
I
anyone in
think
the state you could lead me to, anyone who might be doing it, because it is a particular heat issue that would be a problem for that species.
okay. So my suggestion is that you can do a indoor outdoor combination.
Hmm.
And just like the big dairies do in Arizona, the good thing about Arizona for most of the year is that we have a dry heat, right?
Hmm.
So that means that if you are able to build a barn for your rabbits and just put a swamp cooler in there,
Yep.
you can cool them down pretty effectively with a swamp cooler. You don't need to have AC or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you can mimic. One of my suggestions is mimic what other industries do. So in this
Hmm.
case, the dairies do cool down their animals very effectively by
Okay.
using evaporative cooling, which is the swamp cooler.
Okay, good. That's great. And I'll also check out Mississippi State. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me see if I'll see if I can find a link to that place, and then I'll put it on the comments.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Uh,
We have two more questions in the chat, kind of coinciding together. So the first
mhm.
question is, are there any organic meat processing plants in the state of Arizona?
So, in order to be organically certified, and the word organic is here, you have to have a third party verification. In Arizona, the state does not have a organic board. So you would have to bring the people from New Mexico to Arizona to certify your plant. So the University of Arizona, we did organic um, slaughter, and you have to follow certain regulations, which are very simple. But yeah, we did that for years until last year that we started renovation. So I'm not sure the other small places are doing it, and typically they don't do that because they don't want to change what they're doing for one person or one customer, right? But this is where relationship building comes in, and you go and talk to them and somehow convince them to do it. But it is quite a bit, to pay for the certification from a different state to do one or two animals a year. So it depends on numbers and if it adds up at the end of the day.
And then the second question that kind of coincides is, since the transition to the organic partnership program started in Arizona and the growing popularity of transitioning to certified organic, if I were thinking of becoming a USDA certified organic livestock operation, what are my options for a certified processor or handler?
Well, I think that's pretty much the same question, right? What are your options? So University of Arizona will be an option when they open up again in January. Um, but any facility can become organically certified as long as they go through the process. So, like I said, whatever organization is doing the third party verification can then go and certify that slaughterhouse. And you have to do things like harvest the organic animals at the beginning of the shift and not at the end. You have to um, use organic, um, for example, acetic acid or vinegar might be used to put on the carcass just in case there's any contamination, takes care of bacteria. Well, they might find that organic acetic acid is what they have to use, not commercial. So those are the kind of things that you have to follow. Now, natural and grass fed and local and all those other um, what would you call them? All other types of products, those can actually be done in any slaughterhouse in the state via ADA or USDA.
Okay, do we have any more questions for Dr. Garcia?
I feel like we have still like half an hour, and I did this fast so you can ask questions. And Dana, I looked at Mississippi State really quick on my phone, so just put Mississippi State and then put rabbits right next to, and it'll bring you to the small animal page, and they have questions and answers on that, and then they have a contact info if you want to call them and ask them more.
I did the same thing. So yes, great. Thank you. I'm gonna follow up on something kind of tangentially related. I work with the cooperative extension down here in Sierra Vista, and
Mhm.
one of the things I'm doing working with a Building Healthy Communities program, and our goal is to keep local food local, and
Yeah.
primarily looking at getting farmers and producers to shift their thoughts instead of, well, I have a restaurant in Marana and they always buy my microgreens, so that's who I'm growing for. And I go to the local farmers market, period, end of story. And, their carbon footprint's substantially bigger when they're doing those big traveling deliveries. So and the other challenge I have is that works. I make X number of dollars, usually barely enough to survive when I speak with farmers, but that's all
Correct.
I want to do. Have you found other ways to share with farmers how um, how it's beneficial to keep our food local? I mean, there are all kinds of studies that have been done, and there are great things that happen in that capacity, but so many farmers are operating on a shoestring. Their overhead is tremendous. They're in debt. They have zero time, and changing what works is not interesting to them. So, any thoughts on that?
So here's my thoughts. If you're a farmer, you like to be a farmer because that's what you like, right? You like the land, et cetera, et cetera. Now, most farmers are not born salespeople.
True.
So if it was me and I just wanted to farm, I would partner with a good salesperson or a business that's already established for selling. Okay. Um, I'll give you a personal story. I have a little meat store that I'm going to open up that's on my own, and I'll have mostly local foods. I would say 90% of what we're selling would be local, and that includes meats, mostly meats, and some eggs and milk, etc. Um, and that sells very well in the rich part of town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is the problem that we encounter as farmers, is that if we are in an area there, there's 3,000 people and there's two rich people and the rest are kind of barely
Odd.
making it,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to make ends meet selling to your um, neighbors because they're in the same boat, right?
Right.
So it is a lot cheaper for them to drive to Walmart and buy an egg carton for $8 than pay your $15 so you can make a little extra money.
Those are some
So
expensive eggs.
I'm just saying, I just put a number, but I know an egg farmer that they sell their better eggs, their jumbo eggs, 12 of them for, what do they go for? $8 a pound, $8 a carton,
Wow.
right? And they are in Elfrida, Arizona, but in order to get that price, they have to drive up to Tucson
Yep.
because Elfrida has two people living in there. Nah, there's a little more, but my point is, I understand if you want to produce local and sell local, some of these farmers from rural areas can't do that because the people who are willing to pay for their products are not their neighbors. It's
That,
someone in the city. So
yep,
at
that's
that
true.
point, you kind of find a we situation where me, the egg farmer, and me, the goat farmer, and me, the chicken farmer, can get together and then together drive a semi or a bigger trailer, right? Where we pool our products together to go and sell. So that's where the problem is. It's like, so what do we consider local also? So local could be Sierra Vista produced and Sierra Vista sold, or Tucson technically in most people's definition is still considered local. It has to be a certain mileage away in the radius. So
Yeah, and my guess is your Elfrida farm is Golden Rule, most likely, right? Who has the eggs for $8 a dozen. They've got beautiful products and raw milk and those things. But the other facet of this that you brought up is that you look at, I don't remember exactly how you said it, besides partnering with a good salesperson, you look at already established businesses. And
correct.
so I'm trying to convey to farmers is the school system is an already established business. They've got to feed those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the Arizona Department of Education is willing to work with schools to help reimburse when they purchase locally. But farmers are a little reluctant to make that jump. So
I
I don't know,
think
just
because
right.
part of the deal is, and just from personal experience is, if you are selling, if you're a small producer,
Mhm.
your costs are a lot higher than a big producer
True.
because of economy of scale, right? The big producer can buy semi loads of grain if that's what it needs to produce the eggs at a very, very, very small price. When me, the small farmer, has to drive my truck and put that feet of sack in the back of my truck and drive back, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
my cost is a lot higher. So in order for me to make money, I have to sell it a lot higher, right? So a lot of these places, like schools, or you can even say prisons or
Mhm.
places that buy food in bulk, even though they are okay buying local, they still want to get a good price.
True.
And if you are feeding 300 kids with ground beef that costs $3 a pound, that by all regulations is healthy ground beef, would they do that, or would they go to the local farmer that has to sell his ground beef at $5 or $6 in order to make ends meet? So
Mhm.
you can feed double the kids with half the money.
Cost. Yeah.
So those are the problems. So that's why if I were selling my product, I would go directly to consumer, retail, because there's that, or partner with restaurants that are not afraid to promote your product
Mhm.
and not afraid to charge for that product. There's
True.
a ton of businesses that they think that because they're going to sell, let's say breakfast has to be cheap.
Mhm.
Well, I go to a restaurant that I really love in Tucson that sells, it's kind of like a fusion of English and American and Mexican and every kind of food together. And like one of my favorites is a tater tot Benedict with bacon and brisket and chilies, and anyways, and they use local eggs, and every time I order, that's $20 for that plate, right?
Yeah.
Now there are people who are willing to pay that price as long as the product is good, right? So if you are trying to find somewhere to go with those products, you have to look at those types of restaurants. You can't look at the fast food places. And it sounds kind of elitist, but you have to kind of partner with people who are selling that type of product, to the people who have the money. So that
Right.
is if you want to make it sustainable. If you just want to have fun and not make any money, maybe you're already a millionaire for something else, then you sell them at whatever you want to whoever you want, right?
Yeah. Well, one of my roles at University of Arizona, and if somebody else wants to talk, go ahead. I don't want to monopolize things, but just trying to look at things from a different direction and answering your comment, Sarah. The nice thing about the Department of Education in Arizona is they are trying to promote this Farm Fresh Fridays and farm to school meals. And so what they're doing is say a school of 300 kids purchases weekly from Cisco, one of the big producers of food.
Yeah.
They purchase 100 eggs a week, for
Uh-huh.
example, and that costs $150. Well, what the ADE is willing to do is if that school will buy 100 eggs from a local farmer and that costs $300, if they take that invoice, the school has to pay it, they have to pay the $300, but they take that $300 invoice, submit it to Department of Education, the ADE will reimburse the school that $300. So instead of spending
Okay.
150, they actually get their eggs, for free, essentially, plus $150 credit, if that makes sense. It puts a burden on the school, not on the farmer. But even though I've explained this to a number of our local farmers, they're still hesitant to get involved. So I agree, Sarah, that if the farmer had to wait for reimbursement, they can't do it, especially these smaller places. So my
Right.
job is to convince them it's worth their while, and it also creates a healthier community, period. Just a
Mhm.
recommendation for you guys. There's a little video, it's about 2 minutes long, called A Tale of Two Zip Codes, and it describes what one community does when there's food and resources locally used. 10 miles away, there's another community where their only resources are like a Dollar General to purchase food. And the longevity, health, quality, employment, all those statistics are vastly different. So
Right.
I'm working more community global, but yeah, that's my challenge.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways you can get your foot in, and I mean that the farmer has to be willing to take that risk if that's a risk,
Mhm.
according to them. Um, you can't overcommit if you're a small farmer.
True.
So if you're taking your products to a restaurant and the restaurant just starts selling them like crazy, then you're out of eggs. Then you lose your business. So you have to be truthful up front and say, you know what, I can only produce this much for you, and maybe it's a special on their menu on
Mhm.
Fridays or something like that. So yeah, you have to be honest and be honest with yourself of how much you can produce, how much you can supply in order to
And how
get
to
to those.
scale your production. Sure,
Correct.
that makes sense.
Um,
Okay.
there was a question on the chat that says, "Can you walk us through how a first-time customer farmer would set up the slaughter with you and the cost?" So, for any slaughterhouse in the states, there is a list of ADA USDA processors in Arizona, and I would turn that over to Tiffany so she can provide that. She knows where to get those lists, and she can distribute that information. Now, right now, we do not have USDA facilities that do pigs in Arizona. Just so you know, the University of Arizona was pretty much the only one that was doing pigs. The rest are state inspected facilities that do pigs. There's no USDA, but there are state inspected. Okay, so how would you do it? So any slaughter or house that you want to take your animal to, obviously you want to start by giving them a call, and typically they have a weight schedule, right? So they have animals that are gonna be they have spots for animal harvesting that are, let's say, within sometimes within a week, sometimes within a month, sometimes it's a year, and they're scheduled out that far. When the pandemic hit, it kind of, our attitude shifted a little bit in the meat production, where a lot more people are supporting small farmers and small meat producers. So those small producers are pretty booked, right? So there are a lot of small um, facilities that can do, let's say, 20 animals a week. There is one or two really big ones in Arizona that can do more than thousands. There's not a lot of in between. So that's one of the problems that I see is once you reach a certain uh, number of animals to be harvested, you might have to look out of state for some of this, at least right now. But let's say we're coming to the University of Arizona, we would talk and say, okay, what species do you want to bring in? We would set up a date of when you bring them in. We ask you to have um, obviously a healthy animal, and we have you sign a contract, we can say, or an agreement that if the animal is condemned by USDA because the animal had a disease that we obviously did not know, we are not liable, to pay for that animal. And obviously, you shouldn't bring an unhealthy animal. We ask you to do a deposit or a minimum deposit. Um, that's in case you don't want to pick up your meat after it's done. And it's crazy to say this, but some people harvest animals and then they never pick up their meat, and I don't know why, but it's been done. You come in, drop them off, you fill out cutting instructions, so how do you want your animal packaged, etc. Once we have those, we process it, box it, label it, box it, and then when it's ready for be picked up, you're gonna get a call, and you just come and pick up boxes and obviously pay your bill. So it is as simple as that. I mean, it's like setting up an appointment for your oil change at your dealership, where you are going to just call up the service advisor, set up an appointment, drop off your car, and then you go and pick it up, and all the work is done. That's pretty much how it goes. Typically, we'll take every customer we can, but there are times that we're booked until whatever day. So what I'd like to do in that case is we put you on a wait list, and if your animals are ready to go, let's say for whatever reason I have a cancellation. So sometimes customers schedule 4 animals to be brought in, and they only brought 2 because one of them turns out was pregnant and had a baby, and they don't want to slaughter it. Well, then we have 2 more spots open, right? So then we can give you a call and say, hey, can you bring him in today, or whatever, depending on where you're at and what facility you're using. But that's kind of how I operated the slaughterhouse at the U of A, where I always had a little bit of wiggle room to get people in if they needed that animal done right away. Did I answer your question? That was for...
Was for Sarah. I think it answered it pretty well. She said yes. Another question is there a list of ADA/USDA processors in Arizona? We raise mostly pigs, but can't find any USDA. I guess you already answered that. For pigs, my apologies. I do have a list of the state inspected facilities on like my own personal side. I'm trying to Google where they have the list of things. If I can't find that website, I'll at least email everybody out, informing everyone of state inspected facilities that are options in Arizona.
Yeah, in terms of federal inspected facilities, there's 3 small. I think there might be 4 now. USDA inspected slaughterhouses. One is in Prescott that does most of their own work, and they're starting to do a little custom. They only do beef. There's one in close to Wilcox, Arizona, that's called Cattlemen's Processing. They only do beef. And then the University of Arizona does everything, but they're under remodel at the moment. And I think there's one up north, Tiffany, Little Colorado or something like that. But I've never visited that facility, but I believe they're inspected by the federal government.
They are federally inspected. I don't know if they specifically do just beef or if they do pork as well, but they are an option. I know there's a few state inspected facilities. The 2 I can think of that do pork are Perkinsville Meat Company, which they are in Chino Valley, and Arizona Mobile, which they are in Williams, Arizona.
Right.
And then another question is, when are renovations for the meat lab done?
They're supposed to be done. The place is supposed to open by what is this date? January 10th, they said.
Awesome. And
What's
that'll be
that?
another, I said awesome. That'll be another USDA facility. That'll be an option. January 10th.
That's right.
Do we have any more questions?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Awesome. Well, that concludes this month's Urban Ag Hour. Thank you again for attending, and thank you to Dr. Garcia for giving us this wonderful presentation. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next month. We will put the link for that in the chat, and don't forget to take our survey as well. The link for that
Thank
will be
you
in
for
the
having
chat.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Hopefully,
Bye.
it was worth your hour. So, if you have
Absolutely.
any
Yeah.
questions, I think I'll share. Well, Tiffany, you have my information. You can share my email and cell phone if you like. So, if I don't answer an email, people send me a text or call me. I'm a lot better at answering phone calls and emails. So, anyways, have a great
Awesome.
day, people.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day, guys.